All right, we're sitting down with Tony Khan. Tony, how are you, man?
Hey, I'm great, Conrad. It's great to see you, man.
It's great to see you. I'm excited to catch up with you. We're both in St. Louis. It's a big weekend, and there's so much rich wrestling history in this town. There's rumor and innuendo that maybe a member of the Thez family might be in attendance.
Yes, the wife of the late, great Lou Thez, Mrs. Charlie Thez, will be attending, I understand, AEW WrestleDream, which is a real honor for us. So much great history in St. Louis, and you can't talk about the history of St. Louis wrestling or the history of professional wrestling as a sport without talking about the legend, the multiple-time champion, the late, great Lou Thez. I had the pleasure on AOL, dial-up AOL, of being on the buddy list and having Lou Thez on my buddy list, and he would indulge me and talk to me and told me a lot and very interesting things. He had an incredible perspective. He was an incredible pro wrestler, a legend who had incredible matches. Some of my favorites against Buddy Rogers, who's another one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. And I learned a lot from those conversations on AOL with Lou Thez, so that was cool.
It is cool. And what I love about that story that you just shared, Tony, is whenever I'm asked about meeting you or knowing you before AEW, I always say, he's just one of us. He was a guy who couldn't get enough wrestling as a kid. And in the early days of the internet, we were all on message boards or reading the newsletters and all that. I just love that you were Lou Thez's buddy on AOL. What a small world.
I don't know if I was his buddy, but he was my buddy, and he was on my buddy list. And I'm a big fan of his, so it's an honor to have Mrs. Thez come to AEW WrestleDream, and an honor to be in what is one of the greatest pro wrestling cities, because people listening to this, real wrestling fans, know St. Louis has been a city for decades and has been a destination for wrestlers all over the world want to come wrestle in St. Louis. And we're bringing that here with AEW WrestleDream, which is going to be a great event. And the show starts with the Tailgate Brawl. Now,
wow.
Something new we're building up, the Tailgate Brawl, an hour, a collision, Saturday, an hour ahead of the normal 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central here in St. Louis. That's the normal start time. That's when the pay-per-view starts. So we're doing a lead-in show, a 1-hour free Tailgate Brawl.
Wow.
It's a bigger, better way to start the show, and it's live on TNT at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central with the pay-per-view. So the collision now is actually going to start an hour early with 6 p.m. here local, 7 p.m. Eastern. So it's an hour earlier than a normal collision because the pay-per-view starts then. But we get a 1-hour Tailgate Brawl. It's part of the WrestleDream weekend, and I thought that's such an exciting way to lead into the event. And also for people that might be new to AEW or might just be watching TNT or be on HBO Max, it's a free thing for them already, and hopefully get some more people hooked into the pay-per-view, which I think people are really excited about. And it's just hours away from us right now.
We all grew up on those pay-per-view pre-shows. I love the idea. Who are some of the talent that will be on that? Can you give us a
Yes,
heads
I've
up?
got the whole thing. So it's going to be a great show. We have a big tag team match. There's women's tag team championships coming very soon.
Okay.
More to be talked about that coming out of this pay-per-view, but we've got women's tag titles coming to AEW. So a lot of great women's tag team matches with top stars, including a former TBS champion, Willow Nightingale, on TNT, teaming with Harley Cameron versus Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford, who become quite a deadly team. And we've seen a lot of action and great matches with those teams and those wrestlers. That'll be a great match. We also, speaking of great teams, we'll have a new tag team, two great singles wrestlers, Eddie Kingston and Hook.
Oh, wow.
Teaming up in action. And we'll have also something I'm excited about. Speaking of the great tag teams in pro wrestling, two of the top tag teams, a very exciting young team, Jet Speed.
Okay.
With the Jet Kevin Knight and Speedball Bailey. And they're a really exciting, captivating team. And they're taking on one of the greatest tag teams of all time, FTR.
Okay.
And FTR on the Tailgate Brawl. This is really exciting. And you get that FTR. They'll be wrestling for free. You get to see that on TNT going into the pay-per-view and on HBO Max where you can order the pay-per-view. And then talk about a huge Tailgate Brawl. You've got a Tailgate Brawl involving the Death Riders.
Oh, wow.
And it's the Death Riders with Claudio Castagnoli, Wheeler Yuta, Daniel Garcia, and Pac.
Okay.
All teaming up against Roderick Strong and the conglomeration of Kyle O'Reilly, Tomohiro Ishii, and Orange Cassidy.
What a loaded show, dude.
Yeah, all that. And you get all this free action, and it all, as much as we get into the hour, and then the pay-per-view kicks off at 1 hour into the night. We'll kick off here at 6 p.m. here in St. Louis, 7 p.m. Eastern with the Tailgate Brawl, and then go into the pay-per-view, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. It's on live coast to coast, so 5 p.m. Pacific is the pay-per-view, 4 p.m. Pacific is the Tailgate Brawl. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be a great show. And Conrad, I know you have listeners all over the world and all over America that follow wrestling and can appreciate the great tradition of wrestling in St. Louis. And that's what we're trying to pay tribute to, in addition to this show, which is also paying tribute to the late, great Antonio Inoki, the founder of New Japan Pro Wrestling, the great champion wrestler in Japan and wrestling president who founded New Japan Pro Wrestling, our sister promotion, our friends. And now there's a new IWGP World Champion.
I couldn't wait to ask you about it. I mean, I know that this entire event was based on a relationship with New Japan, and I think most of our listeners probably associate Okada with that title. And now his tag team partner has the title, Takeshita, the new world champion. I mean, this is the first time we've seen him in AEW with New Japan's world title. That in and of itself is exciting at WrestleDream.
It's so huge. And think about how many championships are involved in this tag team match, where you have something so exciting to have the AEW World Tag Team Champions, Brody King, the AEW Tag Team Champions, Brody King, with Bandito, the Ring of Honor World Champion, taking on the AEW Unified Champion, the man who has the international title and the continental title, the man who unified the titles at AEW All in Texas, did something nobody's ever done in AEW, teaming with a man who's now, as you said, the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, the Alpha, Konosuke Takeshita. And what fascinating dynamics, because I think there's so much chemistry between Brody King and Bandito, the way these two guys,
I love it.
They love each other, and the chemistry between them is very real, compared to Okada and Takeshita, who are such great wrestlers individually, and they have chemistry together, yet they clearly hate each other.
Not only that, but let's not forget that back in July, perhaps the match of the year, Bandito holds the most recent pinfall victory over Takeshita. There's a lot of layers to this match, Tony. That's the one I'm most excited about.
That's fantastic. It's going to be great. I'm really excited about Brodito versus Okada and Takeshita. That's going to be fantastic World Tag Team Championship match. And that's a great pick for one of the top matches on a show that's filled with top matches, on a show that includes an I Quit match between Jon Moxley and Darby Allin. This is a match we've been on a crash course, a collision course for 1 year since WrestleDream last year, since Jon Moxley put Bryan Danielson on a stretcher, took the AEW World Championship, and Darby Allin clearly set out on a personal mission. He had multiple missions. He'd accomplished a lot in that time because he climbed Mount Everest.
Yeah.
And eventually he did return to AEW, and he was involved in taking the World Championship out of the briefcase and back from Jon Moxley, which we'll talk about in a bit, that championship. And I got a lot to say about that. And boy, am I excited to talk about that match as well. But I have to say, with Jon Moxley, Darby Allin, the brutality of the I Quit match, and then talking about the Hangman Page capturing the championship from Jon Moxley. Darby Allin played a major role in this huge victory. Hangman Page did something that nobody could do for so long: take the world title from Jon Moxley, climb the mountain that nobody climbed. Darby Allin made history being the first wrestler to climb Mount Everest. He was a part of helping take that championship from Jon Moxley. He was a part of that big victory, and Hangman Page is so great as a world champion, and Jon Moxley was a great champion in many ways too, but the belt never saw the light of day.
Right.
Jon Moxley put Bryan Danielson on a stretcher. Philosophically, Jon Moxley and Darby Allin have a lot of similarities.
Right.
They're at times, Mox and Darby have been friends and even partners, but what happened at WrestleDream 1 year ago changed things forever between them. I'm so excited for that I Quit match, Jon Moxley versus Darby Allin. I think that's going to be incredible. And of course, I have to talk about the AEW World Championship match. I've talked about Hangman Page's victory, and there's a reason I said it this way, because there were so many things that helped lead to Hangman Page conquering the mountain that nobody could climb. Hangman Page is the man in AEW, and he became the man through his hard work and his resilience. But there were people that helped him stop injustices, including I mentioned Darby Allin. I mentioned Bryan Danielson. Also the Ops and Samoa Joe, along with Powerhouse Hobbs, and of course Shibata. You've got Katsuyori Shibata, Hobbs, and Samoa Joe, the World Trios champions, and you've got Samoa Joe, the former AEW World Champion, who lost the title here in St. Louis a year and a half ago in the same arena. And you have one of the architects of helping make sure that Hangman had a fair and square chance in the Texas Death Match, in the biggest show, the biggest match of the year. Hangman Page came through because Hangman Page deserved to win the World Championship. But he could have been ripped off like other people were ripped off by the Death Riders, were other people not on the ball. And that includes Samoa Joe. And Samoa Joe is a great world champion,
No doubt.
legend in wrestling. And this is a great match between two of wrestling's great champions. A first time ever to have Samoa Joe versus Hangman Page for the world title, and Hangman Page defending the world title here at WrestleDream versus the former champion Samoa Joe, as I said, in the arena where Samoa Joe lost the world championship to Hangman's iconic rival, Swerve Strickland, and Samoa Joe with a chance to recapture the title in the same city where he lost it a year and a half ago. So much to talk about with Hangman Page. And again, I said what a big victory it was at All in Texas, and it cannot be said enough, in my opinion, that Hangman Page versus Jon Moxley and the Texas Death Match were so important to AEW. And Hangman Page is a great champion, but Samoa Joe has been a great champion, world champion, TNT champion, now World Trios champion, and could be a double champion by the end of WrestleDream tomorrow.
I'm excited for the show. I do want to ask you about Samoa Joe. He's announced that, when this AEW contract is over, he's going to retire. And he said that he doesn't really want to do a retirement tour. But you did such a fabulous job with Sting's farewell. And on the other channel, people are certainly excited about John Cena's last retirement tour. Do you think you could talk Joe into some sort of retirement tour? I think fans would love to see Joe one last time when they know that time is here.
It's a great point. And I think that when the time's there, we don't want to think about that yet, because I think Samoa Joe still has years left
Great news.
with AEW, which is great. And I think we'll focus on Samoa Joe as one of the top stars in wrestling right now. And if and when the time ever comes for Samoa Joe to hang them up, I hope that AEW will be able to pay great tribute to somebody that is one of the most accomplished stars ever in AEW and one of the great champions in wrestling, which is Samoa Joe. And that's why we're so excited to have Samoa Joe as the challenger in the same city where he lost that title, having a chance to get it back from somebody that he's worked so closely with, somebody who's such a great champion in and of himself, the face of AEW, the world champion Hangman Page.
He had such an incredible run, not only as AEW world champion, but his Ring of Honor world title run was legendary. So the idea that he's got a world title shot in the same arena where he lost the belt, man, what a story you put together here. I want to ask you about St. Louis. When you think about wrestling legends from the area, you inevitably land on Harley Race. And I think about Harley Race every time I'm in St. Louis. And I wonder who would be the Harley Race of AEW, and why is it Jon Moxley?
It was Jon Moxley.
Yeah.
Jon Moxley. He's won the most championships. He's traveled the world. He's a hardened veteran. He's from the Midwest, and he's a straight shooter, and he's a great person who's respected by his peers, who takes no gruff and is so respected as a pro wrestling veteran. And actually, many times in Jon Moxley's matches, I've observed it was like watching a great Harley Race match, or even some of Harley Race's great matches in Japan. Remind me of some of the great Jon Moxley matches. So there's a lot of great influences and a lot of great wrestlers that contribute to Jon Moxley, but Jon Moxley's also an incredible, very unique personality in the world of pro wrestling, who I think it's really cool that he draws comparisons to such a great champion like Harley Race.
Well, just his character and the way he goes about his business and just his performances and his leadership, it just feels like he is the Harley Race of AEW. I want to ask you kind of an off-the-wall question. Who's the one person that wasn't with you in the very beginning of AEW, in front of the camera, behind the camera, whatever you think, that changed the scope of the company that led us to this point in 2025? And I'm specifically looking for people that maybe fans don't hear enough about, the unsung heroes of AEW behind the scenes who really you think, man, I can count on this guy and he's going to do a great job
Well,
for the
there's some
fans of
great
AEW.
people. You said one. You're making
Sure.
two, so I can.
Well, name a few if you'd
Okay,
like.
that'd be great. That'd be great. And because I think, first of all, you mentioned Jon Moxley. Jon Moxley, when we announced AEW, was not actually with us.
Right.
And it came to be that he was on the first show. So he has been at AEW since the very first show.
Absolutely.
And he's been on every AEW event since then as a featured wrestler since the very first night. But Jon Moxley was a surprise at the end of the first show, and we didn't know he was going to be there at first. That worked out incredibly well, but that was very fortuitous. Samoa Joe is somebody that came in 2022, and in just 3.5 years has accomplished a resume in AEW that is unique and unmatched unto himself, being former AEW World Champion, former multiple-time TNT Champion, and the current World Trios Champion, dominant, undefeated, reigning World Trios Champion, challenging, trying to get the world title back. And to have somebody like Samoa Joe arrive in a company that's been around for a few years, that was incredible.
Sure.
Bryan Danielson is a big part of the AEW shows and a big part of the AEW team. Last year here in St. Louis, in this very arena, he wrestled an incredible match against Will Ospreay. He's had so many incredible matches since he arrived, and had that great match in New York against Kenny Omega at the first Grand Slam, down to his final match against Jon Moxley exactly 1 year ago at WrestleDream that put Bryan on a stretcher. I hope someday maybe Bryan could return to the ring. He's never 100% ruled it out, but I'm really proud that we're able to say that Bryan's personal favorite memory in a wrestling ring in his illustrious career, to have Bryan Danielson arrive in AEW, because we had a great group from the very beginning of great people, including so many great people with since the very first show, and people we knew that would be with us. Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, Cody Rhodes, Chris Jericho, Jon Moxley came in at the very beginning and had all these great people involved, and great people backstage, and people that have been with us for years, and people in the production, in and out of the ring, people you see on TV or backstage that have been there since the beginning, like QT Marshall and Sanjay Dutt, and of course on screen, the voice of AEW from the beginning and the voice of pro wrestling for so many years, Jim Ross, from the very beginning. Tony Schiavone technically was not on the first pay-per-view, but he was there from the first year on the first Dynamite.
First TV show, he was there.
So he's been the TV all along. Tony Schiavone, a huge part of it. So many great people, and I'd be remiss not. I will be remiss because there's going to be so many people. I'd be here all day because all the people that have been in AEW, but there were a lot of people from day one. And to have these great people, but then people that have come in along the way, timeless Toni Storm.
Oh, man.
What a great sign. And she arrived as a great champion in wrestling already. Toni Storm, a big free agent, and I loved working with her. She was clearly somebody that we could build around and be a great star. And she's wrestling in a match this weekend against somebody that's been with us since day one, basically, since our first year again, Chris Statlander. And Chris Statlander here since 2019, and somebody that has really earned that position as world champion, face of the franchise. Chris Statlander won the world title at our last show, All Out, in a 4-way match, pinning Toni Storm and earning the title, but they've never had a one-on-one match. And it's the former champion, the most decorated champion ever in AEW, somebody who definitely fills the credentials of what you said, somebody that wasn't here at the beginning but arrived and is now an indispensable part of AEW and the history of AEW, and that's timeless Toni Storm. And Chris Statlander had been here the whole time, and they had this incredible chemistry, and when they've been in matches at the same time, I could see it, and they'd never had a one-on-one match, and that's by design as a matchmaker, because I always knew it would be a huge match on an event like this weekend with WrestleDream. First time ever one-on-one. The champion, Chris Statlander, who's been here as a homegrown star and has earned the position and is one of the greatest wrestlers in the world at the top of her craft, Chris Statlander versus the star of stage and screen, and timeless Toni Storm, who not here at the beginning, and then when she did come in, she had a great reputation, and her reputation and her things evolved with Toni Storm. And it's cool because Toni Storm was, even from the first year she was involved here, was a big star. But then after that, she took some time in her second year to film a movie, Queen of the Ring, about some of the history of women's wrestling. And I started to think about Timeless Tony Storm, and I said to her, do you ever watch old movies? And she said sometimes, and she's very young. She's still in her 20s.
Yes.
And this was several years ago when she was in her mid-20s. And I was saying, hey, Tony, have you ever seen All About Eve or Sunset Boulevard? And she said no. And I said, okay, these are movies. I had this idea for you, and I think there's something inside you that you could tap into and unlock. And it really worked out. And I had a story worked out that was very similar to All About Eve. Elements of the Betty Davis, which I think she's like that. You know, she's young now. It's like young Betty Davis, but now she's tapped into the thing that's inside of her. She's this great performer. She's found and connected with what is the transcendent gimmick that has unlocked the wrestler, which is always that thing you want to find, but it's also something she'll be able to do for so long. And she's got so much experience. For somebody in her 20s, this is somebody that's already had 15 years of wrestling experience and regained the world title in her hometown of Brisbane. And then really the whole thing, All About Eve, not only the Betty Davis character being the featured star, but the story, you know, I had these ideas. I had even picked out a person I thought would be great for the Eve character, who's no longer with us. And I had a great thought on taking from Sunset Boulevard, the Butler.
Okay.
And thinking, okay, well, I have a person here who I think looks a lot like the Butler and would be great in this role in the background, in love with the star of the show secretly. And that's the Butler from Sunset Boulevard, and that's Luther in AEW. And what's cool is we've brought wrestling back to TBS and TNT, but through that character of Timeless Tony Storm, we've been able to also bring wrestling finally over to TCM, to Turner Classic Movies.
I love it.
Ben Mankiewicz involved, and I'm really proud of what we created together. And I love working with Tony. Tony Storm is Timeless Tony Storm is something that was always inside of Tony Storm.
Yes.
And we're able to talk and unlock it. It's fun, you know, kicking ideas around, but she's fantastic.
Well, you've put together one hell of a character. I mean, you guys together have created, I think, the most compelling character in wrestling right now.
Thank you.
I'm really excited about WrestleDream this weekend. I know it's back on an evening. It's not a matinee show. I'll admit, I kind of like the matinee shows. Do you have a preference, the matinee or the evening? Just personal preference for you.
I think they're both great. You know, it's interesting. Certainly, it's a very early call time for everybody involved. So it's a different kind of a day, but the day ends earlier. So it just depends, you know, and I like them both. I think either way is good, but this is nice in the sense of after a long week, and we got a lot of things happening with the Jaguars and the NFL, Fulham in the Premier League, and of course AEW is having such a big year in 2025, and wrestling goes year round, week to week. So especially during football season, it is nice, you know, if you can get a couple hours of sleep here and there. And I just came in, I went to the game last night. I watch as much football as I can, especially if I can go to games in person or on TV whenever I can. I went to the Steelers Bengals game last night, and I came from Cincinnati.
Wow.
Easy trip from Kansas City to Cincinnati back into St. Louis. Been doing media all day. I've talked to a lot of the local St. Louis sports and St. Louis news. I was on the local news and a bunch of radio. And since you're here and helping us and promoting the show, thank you. This is the first wrestling, quote unquote, interview I've done all day. And it's great to sit down and break down some of the great matches, like the world champion Chris Statlander versus Timeless Tony Storm, like the world champion Hangman Page versus Samoa Joe, Darby Allin, Jon Moxley, I Quit match. Of course, the AEW World Tag Team Champions, Brody King, and the Ring of Honor World Champion, Bandito, versus the IWGP World Champion, Konosuke Takeshita, and the AEW Unified Champion, Kazuchika Okada, for the World Tag Team Championship, and so much more. And we're just hours away. It's Saturday night fight night, and it starts with the Tailgate Brawl on TNT and on HBO Max at 6 p.m. here in St. Louis, 6 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Mountain, and 7 p.m. Eastern, an hour early for the collision than normal. And we'll have a big pay-per-view with WrestleDream. I can't wait, man. Thanks for doing this, Conrad.
No, thanks for having us, and thanks for stopping by. And as a reminder, you can catch the pay-per-view on HBO Max and on Amazon and a whole host of other places.
Absolutely. It's on HBO Max. You get a great deal for the subscribers. It's the best price. You can order it through cable, satellite. You're right, Amazon Prime is a great provider. YouTube, a lot of great providers, but we have a great thing going. Warner Brothers Discovery, the engine that fuels AEW, with a partnership with Warner Brothers Discovery every Wednesday on TBS, every Saturday on TNT. And now these big pay-per-views and every show on HBO Max.
AEW always delivers on pay-per-view. If you're within driving distance, go grab your tickets now at AEWTIX.com or just watch it from home on pay-per-view. Thanks for the time, Tony.
Dude, you're the man. Thanks, Conrad.
Thank you.